Hey, thanks, Alyssa. And before I get going, thank you to Alyssa and Mike and Carly for all the work that they're doing to get this conference off the ground and running today. If anyone knows where Alyssa is on the planet, this is an obscene hour at which she's running this conference. So really appreciate all the work focusing on women's hockey and really happy to be a small part of this. I have up on my screen right now what we're going to try to get to in the little bit of time I have for this tutorial. So we're going to focus on starting from scratch with Tableau and taking you from nothing to something with a little bit of visual punch to explore some data. We'll be using the PWHPA data set from the Secret Dream Gap Tour from this year. And just before we get going, I always forget to say who I am and what's going on. So I'm Sean Tierney, and I'm the Director of Hockey Services for Sport Logic now. That's a new role for me in the past few months. I've been with the Bulldogs for several years prior, and I used to be chartinghockey.ca, but that is now disappeared, and your timelines on Twitter are probably much cleaner for it. And we're looking at Tableau. This tool is a really great introductory tool for visualizing and analyzing data, and we'll try to touch on some of those points as we go. The best part about it is that you create interactive tools that help you to tell stories with data, and I hope that we'll get to something that sort of has a little bit of that impact today. So I'm going to make this one go away. So you should be looking at a blank screen when you open Tableau, which I hope you've downloaded now. When you enter Tableau, it's a little intimidating. You see a lot of white space. It's all drag and drop functional to get started, and a lot of different ways you can go. I'm going to show one way we can go today, but you can truly spend sort of a lifetime in here playing and dragging and dropping into different spots to see what you get. When you start, you need a data set. So we'll connect to data. We have an Excel file that has been on Alyssa's website over the past few weeks. It's the PWHPA data set. When you open up in this main screen, any tabs in that Excel file will load here, the different sheets or the tabs. You can have many different tabs and join them in this top panel right here using name of player or player ID to link together several different data sets so that you can do more complex things across different tracking data sources or whatever you have. In our case, we just have this one tab we're going to work with today. We get a nice preview when you are looking just to verify you've got the data set loaded in that you were expecting to see. All the columns have loaded properly. In here, just as a quick preview, it shows you if it's read it as a string, integer, date. You can manually adjust these right off the hop if you wish. Tableau is very good at detecting these automatically, so usually you're good to go. So boring part out of the way. At the bottom is where you create new sheets, new dashboards, and new stories. We're going to start with sheet one. Okay, so we're back to that pane that we saw at the beginning. Nothing going on yet. On the left is everything we have in our sheet to work with. So all of the different measure names that we have and all of the different dimensions are loaded here. In Tableau, you can do calculations for yourself if you wish that exist only within your Tableau workbook that you're creating. If you right-click on any of these dimensions on the side, you can go to Create and choose a calculated field. And so if you wanted to do cycle chances against per 60, this is a place where you could do it. You could put in the divide, put in the time on ice, Tableau will find it for you, multiply it out per 60. You do have the ability to use this as a calculator to create new metrics that didn't come preloaded in the sheet. That's something we'll circle back to later. So for now, here's how this works if you've never touched it before. The columns and the rows, these different pillboxes up here, they'll take in the data you want to use. My favorite thing about Tableau, and the reason I would start here if you're just getting into using different tools for analysis, is that it's drag and drop. So you can very low cost throw things on the wall and see what comes out. And if you don't like it, take them away. So for what we're going to use today, I'm scrolling down to our controlled entries and exits. So I'll drag controlled entries, drag and drop it into our columns, drag and drop controlled exits into our rows. So right away, Tableau guesses that I'm trying to make a scatter plot. We could do other things, but because we have a dimension on the X and a dimension on the Y, because we have both of those preloaded, Tableau guesses we want a scatter plot, and that's what we are going to try today. You'll notice that we just have one dot. Tableau starts by taking the sum of all the data. We haven't told Tableau how to pull this apart in any way. So we're curious about the player level data we have in this data set. So we'll pop over here to the side where we have our measure names. One of those is player. But we would like to see controlled entries and controlled exits at the player level. There's a couple of ways we can do this. The way we'll try first is by dragging it over here into our marks and labeling all of the different PWHPA players that we have. So take player, drag to label. Great. So right off the bat, we've got something that makes a little sense already, which in the world of playing with data, when you get a nice visual and you can get some takeaways right off the bat, that's kind of the motivation you're going to need to get you through the hours of things breaking. So we've got a little visual right now, and that's great. Not surprising to see some of the names that have popped up towards the right of a screen. We're just doing pure counting stats right here. So if you played more opportunities for entries and for exits, we won't worry about that for the moment. We could have dragged this in other ways. And again, I encourage you, follow along with this tutorial today, but hop back in and play around because you can't break anything in here. If we had taken player and put it to color, Tableau would have assigned a different color for every woman in the data set here, for every hockey player. We could drag this to shape, and we'll assign a different shape for every player. Not very useful when you have dozens and dozens of players. But if you have, say, a handful of teams, something like shape or color makes more sense. So for us, we'll keep it on label. Okay, so the next thing I'd like to show you is now that we have a bit of a visual, let's get a sense of what the average numbers were for entries and exits for the players in the PW. The axes here are editable fields. So head down to controlled entries and right click. This gives you some options to change how it looks and how we're showing it. If you choose edit axis, for example, you can tell Tableau exactly what you want the range to be. So Tableau knows 0 to 55 covers everyone, but you can tell it to do something else if you want. We're going to set this as fixed for now, and that'll come up again in a little bit. Choose fixed here. So that'll lock the beginning and the end of our X range. And we'll do the same thing on the Y range. Right click on your axis, edit the axis, and choose fixed. That way, no matter what other filters we wind up applying here, we'll always maintain this range, and that'll be helpful. Okay, so good start so far. The next thing I'm going to try with this, and it's something that you might not have the PW logos on hand right now. It's something I can provide Alyssa afterwards, or maybe you have them on hand. From over here, we can add more information about these players to help us dissect the data. So I'm going to go grab team, drag and drop. You could drag it to color. It'll just choose a color for each of the teams that we have and show us the legend over here on the side, what it chose. If you like, you can click the little down arrow, the caret, edit those colors and set them to whatever you want. There's myriad color options here. I have the logos loaded, so instead of colors, I'm going to go team and put that on shape. So it picked random shapes for each of these teams. Again, we can go over and edit our shapes, click the down arrow, edit shape. And I know I'm moving perhaps quickly here, but it's being recorded. Please revisit, slow my voice down, follow along at your leisure later on. Here you can choose from your different shape palettes. So I've loaded the PWHPA logos in already for each of the teams. If we click Assign Palette, now we have the logos functional for each of the teams that we're looking at, and we can click Apply and OK. Great, so now each of our players is assigned the team that they belong to in the data set. A little small, so let's look at another way we can edit this. In our marks, where we do most of the work on how the visual actually appears, you can choose size. If we move size up along the slider, we're going to get to something that looks a little bit better here. Maybe we want it even a little bit larger. Now we're starting to get some more readable logos. Okay, looking good. Now I would like to have some sense of, okay, how much did each of these players actually play, leading to these counting stats? If we jump back over to the measures that we have, one is TOI. If you drag TOI over, again, you can use any of these different marks as your option. We're going to use size. So drag TOI to size. Now Tableau will resize all of these logos based on the time on ice that the player played. So the biggest logos represent about 190 minutes of data. We have as low as 11 minutes of data. I'm not liking the spread on the size of the shapes right now, so I'm going to go in and just sort of move it back to that mid-range, something around there, and this is just sort of a matter of your taste. Okay, great. So now we've loaded in player name, we have their team, we have their TOI. If you hover over any of these logos, all the data that we've loaded so far appears in the hover. So we've got name, team, their entries and their exits because we loaded that in for our axes, and their time on ice. The hover stores whatever we toss at it. If we decided there was some other piece of information we don't want on the chart, but we do want it accessible in the hover, you can throw into there anything you like. So let's say shot attempts matters to us, and we want to know it even though we don't want to show it on the graph yet. Drag shot attempts up to tooltip, the little text box. It'll tell us here that we've recorded the shot attempts in the text box. Now, if you hover, shot attempts appears there for the player as well. Again, super easy, a nice way to hide some additional information that you might not be showing in the chart, and sort of just make it accessible in the visual that we're creating. Okay, let's do a couple other quick things to sort of massage this visual before we hop over to our dashboard interactive view. On the axes, we can set the average lines and reference lines, just those points of context and reference to help us evaluate. If you right-click on entries on the x-axis at the bottom, choose Add Reference Line. There are many, many options here for what you can do: line, band, distribution, box plot, and a number of different ways to show them, far more than is useful to go through in a 45-minute tutorial. For our purposes, let's add the average line, and that average line is going to show us the average of the controlled entries field. For the label, I'm going to choose none so that we just get the line. And this checkbox here, show recalculated line for highlighted data points. That means if you click on any of the players on the viz, the average line will move to zero in on them as a crosshair. I don't want that, so I'm going to uncheck it. Click OK. Now our average line has appeared. So the average number of entries in this data set without any type of other filtering is 13. This can be very nice just as a visual reference point to see sort of where the mass of players averaged out to. Let's add the same thing on the y-axis. So again, right-click, add reference line. We want the average. We're not going to, let's leave the computation so you can see what that looks like. And uncheck the box for recalculated line. So since I didn't remove the label for this, it shows average line. Maybe you prefer that. I usually take it out. That's personal taste. Let's do one more thing with these reference lines while we're here and thinking about it. Go back to your x-axis and right-click. Add reference line. And move over to distribution. Here we have some different choices. My favorite one is standard deviation. So now we get plus and minus 1 standard deviation, and that'll appear on our chart as well. Again, not necessary, just something to give us some context on the spread in the data. I think that this gray shading that they default to is very dark, so I'm going to lighten it a little bit. I prefer not to have any labels showing, and I always uncheck the highlight box. So now we've shown the standard deviation plus and minus 1. If you hover, it shows you what those numbers actually are. Now we're getting a sense of the group of players that really set themselves apart beyond one standard deviation from average. Okay, so here's the test. See if you can follow along if you're doing this on your own right now. Going over to the y-axis, we're going to add the standard deviation reference band here as well. Right click, add reference, go to distribution, choose standard deviation. And if you're like me, you can lighten this one up a bit. Okay, great. So kind of a standard scatter plot. My addiction or my love for scatter plots is something that I've really introduced with myself at SportLogic over the past few months. I've become very associated with a love of scatter plots. I apologize to everyone for that. So now we have a nice visual of our entries and exits at the player level. Sort of a million other things we could have done over here. We could have calculated some of our own metrics. Maybe we want to have expected goal share in the tooltip so that when we hover over Decker, we can see what our expected goals for percentage was. All sorts of different things that we may have chosen to do. But for now, let's leave it here so that we can hop over to the dashboard and take a look at the different ways we can start to play with how we show this as a data story in a dashboard. Head down to the bottom. Right beside the new sheet button is the new dashboard button. Choose that to open up a new dashboard. This is the view that if you're using Tableau, eventually someone who's interacting with your viz, choosing filters, moving things around, this is what they'll see. This is what they'll interact with. The sheet is the background that feeds into the dashboard. The dashboard is the place where someone can play to find insights in the data. Any sheet we create, and we'll go back and create another in a second. Any sheet we create will show up here, and you can drag and drop all of the sheets you create onto a single dashboard and start to move them around in the way that you want to visualize. So if we drag sheet 1 onto our dashboard, the first thing we'll see is this is very squished together, difficult to see what's going on. If you head over to the left, there's the size option. Tableau will suggest some different sizes for you. It'll guess right off the bat what size it thinks is appropriate. We're going to choose a fixed size that we want. And for me, I'll choose 1200, 900. It's just going to vary on what you're trying to do and the size of your screen. So I'll leave that up to your personal taste. So this is a little better. We've got some spread going on now. We can see the data again in a way that makes sense. Okay, so a couple of things we can look at from here before we jump back and make one more sheet. If we are looking at all this data together, sort of gives us a nice sense league-wide, but there isn't a lot of ways to interact with what we've created right now. It's a static chart, great for Twitter to show something, but not something where you could interact and take some new insights away from it. If you go up to your team logos legend, there's a little pencil that'll appear. Click on that. When you do that, we can now choose these different teams and highlight just those logos. Okay, so already we start to get a sense of how many players on each team were sort of driving play in terms of entries and exits. You can click along by teams. We start to see some spread. Already you can start to see, some sort of first takeaways you might get out of the data. Okay, so great, you've got a dashboard. There's lots we can bury into this to make it even more interactive for someone to use or for ourselves to do some exploration on the data too. First, let's jump back to the sheet we just made. I think that one thing that would be handy here is if we had done something with position. So we can look at just forwards and just defensemen. Let's grab position and drag it into filters. Tableau will show us what the filter is going to show, just defense and forward for what we have here. We'll click all to say, yes, let's show them all to start. Click apply and click OK. Now, if we want the filter to be something a user can eventually use, we need to make it appear on the sheet as something that can be interacted with. So go back to the position filter and right click. We're going to choose show filter. Now you'll see the filter has popped up on our sidebar over here. So now a user can go in and say, actually, just leave defense out of this for me, and defensemen disappear. leave forwards out, forwards will disappear. And you'll notice that our average line is recalculating based on the group that's left. So if you want to know just the entries, exits average for defense, now we have that just by clicking the filter. I can't stress enough just how editable with clicking around Tableau is. So if you click on your filter, there are a number of options for ways that filter can appear. I'll often choose single value dropdown because it cleans up this view a little bit. Now, instead of showing us everything all at once, we can click on it and choose defense, forward, or all right from here. Okay, so let's say we're happy with that. We hop back to our dashboard. If we want that to appear here, we need to get rid of the sheet and bring it back. Great, now our filter is there. So now a user has the option, if they're interacting with our viz, to do the position filters for themselves at a click. Okay, so really nice. I want to show one more way that we can make this quickly interactive, and then touch on one quick sort of analysis tool as well before I run out of time. Okay, so really handy. We can see what we want to see. Jump back to sheet 1. I'd like to make it so that it's easier to look at this by team. So, I'm a fan of, let's say, for example, Montreal in this case, and I just want to see their data. That's something I want to be able to highlight. So go back to your label in the marks. We had chosen to show all labels. That's the default setting. Now we're going to change it to selected and unclick the overlap other marks box. Okay, so now nothing is appearing. I'm going to show a way to add some sort of visual effect and make this team filter work for us as well. Head back down to the bottom. Right here where it says new worksheet, we'll create one. Go grab your team name from the side, and you can drag it to columns. And then for me, I'm going to set the shape again. So I chose shape from all the different options we could have, all sorts of things we're not going to look at today, but you can play with on your own. Choose shape and take team again to shape. Now Tableau has associated all those teams with their proper logo again. Very small. Let's make it bigger by clicking on size and resizing. Okay, great. Hop back into your dashboard. So now sheet 2 is available to put on this dashboard as well. Essentially, it's limitless how many sheets you might drag into a dashboard to make it interactive. We're going to use the second one for now. Take sheet 2. And when you drag it over, it shows you where it's going to land it and how the rest of the view will adjust. So I'm going to set it at the bottom, and it's telling me this is the amount of space that will be taken up. Everything else will get squished. Okay, a couple of really quick formatting tricks to give this sort of the visual we want. We'll hide that title. So right-click, we'll hide that title. Right-click, we'll hide that field label. Right-click will hide the header. Now we just have the team logos. Still too small, they're not taking up the whole space. If we scroll over to the side, we have options here on the right for this sheet on our dashboard. Choose the down arrow. Everything in Tableau is editable. So we'll choose the down arrow and go to fit. Choose entire view. Now we get a resized visual of those logos. Too big for what we want to do. So I'm going to edit how big this box is. Click and drag down to about here. Okay, great. Nice logos, easy to see. I want to use these as my filter instead of the legend over here. There's no reason from a data perspective to want to do this. This is all about how do you present the data in sort of a compelling, interesting way that encourages people to dig through and look for insights. We could do all of what we want to do without this, but it's just one of those ways that you might get someone interested, catch them with the visual, encourage someone to dig into the data deeper. And, I'm not sure what percentage of the battle analytics is having buy-in from the people that wind up making decisions, but a visual that's interactive and easy to use and captivating, that can help you get that buy-in to get the message across of what you're trying to do with your data. So go back down to our logos here. Again, on our options on the side, if you choose the funnel, it says use as filter. We're going to choose that. Now Tableau will use these logos as our filter for the visual above. So let's say we want to see Montreal, talking about them before. Click on Montreal. Now it's just showing us the Montreal logos only. Click them off, everyone shows up. Click Montreal, hold Control, and click Minnesota. We get both teams. Unclick Minnesota, and we just get Montreal. And now this is just a sort of more visual filter that we can use to see our teams. Since I don't need this legend anymore, I can go click on it, click X, and it disappears. Again, everything in Tableau is editable, and you can't break anything badly by going around and clicking. Nothing that an undo won't fix for you if you do something kind of unexpected. So when we choose one of our teams now, looking at Montreal, I'm trying to find Karel Imard to see how well she did on exits and entries. I don't have any of my labels showing up right now. So that means I've got to jump back to my sheet and see what I did wrong, something that I can fix. I can hover over all of these and see the data right in here for myself, but let's make it so that we got those labels popping up again. So we can hop back to sheet one, we know it's there. We can also use this pane to hop right back to the sheet from here. That's handy if you have 7 or 8 sheets living in one dashboard and it becomes tricky to keep track of which is which. If you go to the side bar up in the top corner, there's a go to sheet option. That'll take you right back to the sheet that you were looking at, knowing that you want to make some edits. Our issue right now is the labels. We'd like the labels to appear when we click on the logo for the team we're looking at. So we can choose highlighted, all, min, max, all sorts of different options. Let's just go back to all for now. Okay, so this is pretty good. We don't get everyone in here because our data is a little bit compact. You could solve this in a couple of ways. One is you could make your dashboard bigger, and that would allow more logos to show up. Another way that we could do it is we could change our axis ranges again. So we set those as fixed before initially, and that was to make it easier to compare if we move from team to team. So if we want to see Rebecca Johnson, we know that she would fall kind of in the Hillary Knight range because our fields, our axis ranges haven't changed. So we can click along, the team average will move, but our ranges don't change. So it makes it maybe a little easier to compare as you choose teams. However, if we want to maximize the visibility of each team, we can edit those axis ranges again from here. So right click, edit axis, and let's just go back to automatic. And we'll let Tableau choose the range that we should have based on the data that's available. So I right click, edit axis, and go back to automatic. Okay, great. So now if I choose a team, Tableau will resize these axis ranges for us based on the data in the group that we're looking at. So we get a little bit more spread. So now there's just a couple of logos that are appearing without a label just because they're close together, but we're getting some nicer spread. Let's say I'm passing a view along to a coach and I need all the labels accessed. All the labels to appear. So if we wanted to do that right in here, you can choose any one of these, hover over top and right click it. Again, everything is editable in Tableau. You can't break anything, so try things out. We can go to annotate this mark, and it'll ask, what do we want to include in our annotation? I just want player so that it matches the labels for everyone else. So I'm going to delete all those possible options that I have loaded. Now it will give me the label for just that player. I don't want it in the way, so I might move it to here. Great. So now we have the label for that one, annotated as well. The annotation isn't limited to just showing you the data. It's fully editable. So we might want to say something about Samantha Kogan. We right click, annotate the mark. You can type freely in here to show something you want to say about the player. And that'll annotate nicely too. Again, this is better for a static view if you were presenting it and needed sort of a snapshot to share. Doesn't work as well if you're planning to share the viz and plan to have someone interacting with it. So I decided I don't actually want it. I'm going to click on these, click delete, and they're gone. Okay, great. So this is sort of a really quick crash course through how we can get our data to appear, create a dashboard that somebody could potentially come in and do some analysis with. One more thing I want to show before we look at a quick analysis tool in here for ourselves. Any field that you can click on is editable. So sheet 1 is not a very interesting label for what we've got here, a title for our viz. If we double click here, Tableau is just guessing that we want sheet name. We could choose any of these preloaded options from the data that we've used so far. So maybe we want it to show the team based on who we've clicked on. Right now we're clicked on all. If we click on a team, this will dynamically update to show just the team that we've chosen. Or we may just want something static that describes the viz that we're looking at. So entries versus exits, the PWHPA. This is just a standard text box. So you can resize, you can change the alignment, you can change the font to 1,000 different fonts that are preloaded. Sort of everything's at your fingertips here. So I've chosen this. Let's say we decide that our sort of white background is a little bland, doesn't have the punch we want. If we click up here and choose layout for our dashboard, we can edit all sorts of the ways that this visual appears. I'm just going to choose a different background, something to give a little color to what we're showing. I'll choose yellow here. Okay, great. So now we have sort of our first viz, not the most complicated thing in the world, but something that's got some real visual impact. If we wanted to start to do a little bit of sort of first level, first pass analysis on, say, what entries and exits, how they're related to each other. Do we see that players that have more entries tend to have more exits as well? Is there a linear relationship? We're looking at counting stats right now. We didn't make that edit to make these per 60 or per 20 or something for a player level. They're not standardized. So right now we're seeing that as entries increase, exits increase as well. We can tell that that's what our analysis is about to show us. But that makes sense because time on ice is such a huge factor here, obviously. However, just for the sake of showing it here, if you click anywhere in your sheet, even in the dashboard view, if you right click, we can go to trend lines. And in the trend line, if you choose show trend lines, we'll get our sort of our slope line to show our relationship between the two measures that we've loaded. Again, time on ice is not equalized here, so this is more just to show what we can do with the R² line. If you hover over your trend line, we get the slope, we get the R², and we get the p-value. And so if we take the time to make these per 60 metrics and load them in, we would get a first level sense of, are these two measures related? Are we seeing a relationship? Maybe we would decide that we want to swap out controlled exits and put, say, goals for while on ice on our y-axis. Now we would have a sense of what's the relationship between entries and goals for while you're on ice. It's not a super complicated tool. Instead, it's a really accessible and easy way to start to get some first level analysis on which pieces of data might be related and are worth digging into more. Okay, so let's edit this as well, just to show the functionality we have. Let's say we want to have a little bit more detail going with our trend line. You can choose format and play around with the actual appearance of the line. Or we can choose edit the trend line. In here, we can tell Tableau that we'd like to show some different iterations, some different variations of the trend model. So you could choose logarithmic, and we get that updated behind us to show if we were doing log instead. We can use exponential trend line. You can use polynomial. You can change the degrees of freedom to see how we get variation. We can show confidence bands. That'll show us just sort of a loose range around the trend line that we've included. Can allow different trends per team color. That means that when we click on a team right now, we'll see the line represent just that team. Obviously, this line is probably a little bit too dynamic for such a small data set. So again, a lot of ways for us to get that kind of first pass of what the data might be telling us. Okay, and unless Alyssa hops into my ear and says that I'm completely out of time, I think I've moved quickly enough that we can actually put this to per 60 and show how these might actually be related in our data set. Beautiful. Okay, so let's do that. I'm going to take away the trend lines. So what we'd like to do is let's equalize these for players by making them per 60 numbers, and then we can actually compare if there's any relationship between entries and exits using this scatter plot. So I'm going to jump back to the sheet, go to sheet. Okay, so Tableau lets us do calculations and formulas right within our worksheet. So we would like to figure out controlled exits per 60 and controlled entries per 60 for each player. If we go to controlled entries, we can right click on it and create a new calculated field. This is a calculator that will make a new metric for us. So we know we have controlled entries loaded in right now. We're going to divide it by time on ice. Tableau will say, is this what you mean, to make sure that you're loading the right piece of data? Great. We'll bracket this up. We've got our controlled entries divided by time on ice, and we'll make it a per 60. So we'll use multiplication times 60. And we need to name it so we remember what this is when it shows up on the left side for us. So we're going to have entries per 60. Call it whatever you like. Apply and OK. Now we've got entries per 60. It wasn't in our data to begin with, but Tableau lets us house it. I want to replace what we have for entries with this, so I can click and drag. I didn't get rid of my initial controlled entries as a count. So Tableau has actually made two different side-by-side viz for us, which is sort of neat and handy if you want to compare a couple of different things. So here we still have our original view with the counting stats, but now we have entries per 60 instead on our second view, still with the raw count of controlled exits. Okay, so now let's repeat that process. If you're following along right now and you want to test yourself, see if you can remember how we created this calculated field. We're going to do it for exits this time. So back to controlled exits, right click, create calculated field. We'll divide our exits by each player's time on ice, and we'll put that in brackets. Now exits divided by the player's playing time, and we'll multiply it out by 60 again. Don't forget to name this so we know what it is. This is our exits per 60. Click apply and click OK. Okay, great. So we can do the same thing with our rows. We have exits per 60. We can drag that into our rows pill. Now we have 4 views populating here. So we have raw count and raw count. We have per 60 versus a raw count. We have raw count versus per 60, and here is our per 60 versus per 60. So this is only useful, I think, as a data analyst. If you're looking through your data, looking for different ways to show things, Tableau will show you a lot without costing you much in terms of time or computation. You can make mistakes, identify what they are, and change them out really quick. So we know we don't actually want these raw counts anymore. So we're going to drag those away. Kick it out. Kick it out. Great. So now we have our exits and exits per 60 only. We're still seeing relationship going on here. Probably makes sense that players that are capable of creating entries are also capable of creating exits. That would be team and system dependent on if you have forwards coming back to help with exits, or if your defenders have license to create entries as well. Since we're now using two metrics that didn't exist before, you'll notice that our reference lines have disappeared. We'll have to redo those if we want to show our average and our reference bands again. I'm going to add them back in and go very quickly because we've already looked at it once. So again, these are all steps we did earlier to add the average line and to add the standard deviation plus and minus 1. I'm being finicky and taking away and doing the sort of options I prefer to see. The Tableau is infinitely customizable, so do as you see fit here. Great, so now we have our distribution again, our average lines again. We made all these changes to sheet 1. So if we hop back to our dashboard, now everything has updated for us. We have entries and exits per 60. So the test that we wanted to run was, are these related measures? Do these tend to go together? Do we expect a player who is strong on entries to also be creating lots of exits? So we can repeat our process from before. Right-click anywhere, go to trend lines, show trend line. It still has us loaded up on this very free trend line, which is probably too much given our sample size and not giving us enough of a takeaway. So let's edit it again. Right-click, edit the trend line, and let's just stick with linear regression. Definitely the best first pass to help us understand. Okay, so some clear relationship going on. If we hover over our line again, we'll see that there's relationship between these two. With the R squared, the p-value is very, very low. That's good news for perhaps finding something with the data here. And then the slope, or the formula for slope, is listed at the top as well. And then finally, we have the ability still with what we were showing to do this by team and see how related it was by group. Okay, let's do two final formatting bits of business here, and then I'll likely be out of time. So the main takeaway with this is that Tableau is great for helping you to tell a data story. You want to give the user functionality, as many different filters, as many different ways to interact with the data as possible to help them explore. And then some of those sort of guides that you can add can be handy for ensuring that someone is taking away the right takeaways based on sort of what the data means. So something we can do to help identify these quadrants we've created is drag some objects over here to help identify the quads. So we're going to choose a floating text box. This time, instead of pushing the viz out of the way, this is a floating text box, so it's just going to drop right on top of our viz for us. Now we're going to drop this label into the top left. These are players that are high on exits per 60, but low on entries per 60. We can think of a clever name for it. For now, let's just call it high exits, low entries. Now this floating text box appears for us to help mark this quadrant out. If we find a player hanging out in this quadrant, they're a player that we know is strong on exits, not doing much work on entries. We can drag those into all 4 of our quadrants to help the user in the end take away what they should from the data, or at least understand what the different plots mean. So this one would be low exits, low entries, and we can follow this pattern all the way around. High exits, high entries. And the same with down here for our high entries, low exit. I can type whatever you want. This is just sort of a quick way for our users, once they see the viz, be able to look and sort of get a quick takeaway from what they're looking at. Last thing. One of the nicest new features that Tableau has made possible over the past about year or so is the ability to have animations happen within your viz. So if you go to Format at the top and choose Animations, it will default to off. We're on right now, and you can change the speed of the transitions from one view to the next. We won't see as much in our view because we don't have a lot of different filters going on, but the animations, again, are just another way of drawing the eye to your visual so that the person who's looking at it the other end gets a sense of how the data changes and what the relationships are when you change the filters. So since we've added those animations, we'll see the logos move for us now when we choose different filters, say position. This is as much or more about telling a story that grabs someone's interest. The data points don't change by having these animations on, but there's a great value in being able to draw eyes to what you're trying to say and give a reader or somebody who's looking at your viz, using your viz, some extra sort of impression of what's going on in the data set as you go. There we go. Okay, so when you are all done, you've got the viz that you're happy with, you're ready to save and share. Go up to your save button here. This will ask you what you want to call it, WHPA tutorial. When you click save, this will automatically open up a web page that houses your viz. The link at the top of that viz, you can share it with someone within your organization or with a friend or whoever. They'll be able to go into this viz and apply all the filters you've built for them. And so that's the final step for you to click save, and it'll upload for you. And it'll automatically open the browser that you need. And now your viz lives online with a link that you can share with others. Perfect. Okay, I think I managed to time myself well with this last section. So the last thing I would say is Tableau is something that's really helped me a lot, that I still use daily in terms of data analysis. The Tableau public version is free, so there's no cost. Very easy to learn as a first analysis tool. And I still try to remain as diligent as I can about kicking people in the right direction for resources to help learn how to use Tableau or do different things. So feel free to reach out to me, and if I can point you towards the right resource as you're trying to go on your own Tableau journey, don't hesitate to reach out. So thanks again to Alyssa, Mike, and Carly for involving me today. I hope that this was helpful for people trying Tableau for the first time.
Oh, there you go. I've got to turn my camera back on to let you know that I was here, just floating. Thanks again for the tutorial. I have a couple of questions from people in chat, just in general, not specifically about Viz issues. I think they all got solved by other people in chat, which was nice to see. But one of the questions came out was, how important and impactful is Viz in making data more accessible for fans and media, especially in a world of women's hockey where data can be scarce?
Right. I think the fact that we're starting to see more and more data available, especially for people that are in public doing this work, you need to have lots of data for these visuals to really mean much, to make an impact. And so, we have a number of people presenting today who do painstaking work to provide public data sets. There's, certainly limitations that come with not having enough data. That's not limited to Tableau. That's limited to anything you try to do with data when you don't have the right data set size. But just excited to see that the Sport Logic has been involved in PW, especially getting data out. And there's lots of people doing good work to share data sets in public as well. Always the challenge trying to get enough data. And I'm not saying anything revolutionary at a women's hockey data conference to say that, but yeah, definitely the limitations with the data that's available. You do the best you can. And I still think a visual can be impactful, even if we only have, a handful of games to show something with.
And another one, what advice did you have generally for beginners who are starting to use Tableau or, other visualization software?
The thing I always say, just if someone is brand new, the learning curve on Tableau at the start is a little bit steep. And if you can persevere through the first couple of weeks of throwing things at the canvas to see what happens when you do, it gets very easy very quickly and is so customizable after. So it's more of me giving you sort of a, little nudge in the shoulder, stick with it. The first couple of weeks are hard when it's brand new. Revisit this Tableau tutorial. Hopefully that helps you get over that hump. Once you get past that first wave, there's so much you can do. And any day you spend some time in Tableau is time well spent. So just stick with it. The learning curve is definitely steep at the beginning, but it levels off quickly.
Awesome. And just one last one. If there's anyone who's watching this like in post and has an issue and obviously live chat isn't there to help them along, are they able to aggressively tweet at you, or is that no longer allowed?
So my public presence is definitely much quieter, but in terms of pointing people towards resources where they can go and learn, I know where all these things are, a life spent with Tableau. So I can certainly kick people towards the right places to look for advice on how to use the tool. Still happy to try to push people in the right direction if I can.